As we race toward the end of another year, many of us promise ourselves that once we get to the holidays, we'll slow down, we'll rest, reset, and look after ourselves. Well, we know how that goes. The break often finds us exhausted, wired, maybe overwhelmed with a new set of responsibilities and new holiday to-do lists. Many of us crash for a few days, sometimes get sick, finally start to feel human again, and then it's almost time to go back to work. But next year will be different, right? If we only make some resolutions. Wrong. The data is pretty clear. The majority of those resolutions are gone by February. Not because we're weak, but because we're trying to overhaul our lives with a grand vision. Not to mention on a date when we might be merrier than usual. And that is a terrible strategy. We wake up on January 1st and feel hungover, or at least resistant to change. And even if we feel motivated, those resolutions start to fade in comparison to important things like to-do lists and pressure and guilt and our nervous system saying, hey, this is kinda uncomfortable. Isn't there something else we can do right now? Or our brain, which is a prediction engine, offering up options that are way less stressful than that 5:30 p.m. CrossFit class. But it doesn't have to be this hard. And the best time to prepare for a great holiday break turns out to be yesterday. The second best time is today. Rather than waiting for January 1st to rescue us, we can start making a few small, deliberate shifts right now, grounded in how human brains and bodies actually work. So that by the time the holiday arrives, we're softly landing, not slamming on the brakes. So let's start with stress. Because if the nervous system is stuck in survival mode, everything else is downstream from that. Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated, it disrupts sleep, and it can weaken our immune defenses. In fact, classic work from Sheldon Cohen and others showed that people under higher stress were more likely to catch a cold when exposed to a virus. Under sustained pressure, the body literally loses some resilience. Now, I've spoken to hundreds of people who report that they dread the holiday because they always get a sore throat on the first day. There is an alternative reality just waiting for you if you start turning the stress dial down before the holidays. And you don't need a 20-minute meditation to begin. That, in fact, will feel like torture. Start with something so small, it's almost impossible not to do. Like a couple of rounds of box breathing. Inhale through the nose for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. That's one box. Even just 2 rounds of that, roughly a minute, is enough to begin. It can be done in the car, in the bathroom, before a meeting, as you get into bed. That 1 minute tells the nervous system, right now it's safe enough to pause. And if it feels good, add more boxes. But even 2 or 3 rounds a couple of times a day will start to change your baseline. Now for evenings. Instead of another generic lecture about sleep hygiene, consider running a simple experiment. Buy an early Christmas present, 1 warm yellow or red bulb, or a couple of candles. Then choose 1 night a week where 90 minutes before bed, the harsh overhead lights go off and that warm light or candle light comes on instead. Instantly, you'll notice the atmosphere changes. Physiologically, there's less bright blue-rich light going into the eyes, which makes it easier for the brain to understand that the day is winding down. Psychologically, a familiar pattern of bright lights, phone in hand, half watching, half scrolling is gently interrupted. And on those nights, perhaps even step outside for a few minutes. Look up. Maybe you'll see a shooting star or at least a satellite sliding across the sky. If the phone really has to come along, turn it into a tool rather than a distraction. You could even download a stargazing app like Sky Guide so that you can learn the constellations and maybe even catch the space station passing by. For me, as a kid, the stars held so much wonder. They haven't changed, but we have. So perhaps go outside, whether it's by yourself, with friends, with family, maybe even make a wish or two. If you reduce light exposure and sleep feels deeper or the next day feels different, and chances it will, try stretching the experiment to 2 nights a week or more. Not as a strict rule, just as a pattern that seems to work. The same idea applies in the mornings. Many of us wake up and immediately hand control of the nervous system to the outside world. Phone on, notifications, news, messages. Before our feet have touched the floor, the brain is reacting to everyone else's priorities, including the algorithm. So for the next few weeks, put one simple boundary in place. The phone stays on airplane mode for the first 30 minutes after waking. If that's difficult, leave it in another room overnight. In that first half hour, arrive in your own life first. Step outside and feel the air. Do 2 rounds of box breathing. Have an actual conversation with someone you live with. Make a coffee. It doesn't have to be a perfect morning routine, just something that belongs to you, not your phone. That single change moves the day from pure reaction to a sense of authorship. Now, values, because a holiday that is restful but misaligned can still feel strangely hollow. Sometime today, grab a post-it note and write down your number 1 core value right now. Not a value that sounds good, but something that actually matters to you in this season of your life. It could be family, health, growth, creativity, contribution, adventure. Stick that note on the bathroom mirror. And each morning, before walking away from the mirror, look at that word and ask, what is one way I can act in alignment with this value today? Don't leave until something concrete appears. Call someone. Say no to something that doesn't fit. Move your body. Focus deeply for an hour instead of scattering attention. Rest when the old pattern would be to push. The actions can be small, but the signal is huge. This isn't just a nice word on a post-it. It becomes who you are in practice. Then, add one weekly question. What went well? At the end of the week, sit down with yourself or with your family and genuinely explore that question. What went well? It might be a conversation with a child, a project that moved forward, a moment where patience appeared instead of snapping, a boundary that was honored, the simple fact that a tough day was handled better than last year's version of you. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about training attention to include what's working, not only what's broken. And that subtle change in focus matters. Gratitude practices like this are so powerful that they can even improve sleep quality. Finally, attention span. On average, people now spend about 47 seconds on a screen or task before switching to something else. That number is eerily close to the length of a reel or TikTok video. Devices are literally training us to live in half-minute fragments. And when that becomes the default, deeper experiences, conversations, books, creative work, even a full episode of something thoughtful start to feel oddly uncomfortable. So here's a challenge for the weeks leading into the holiday. When you catch yourself mid-scroll, upgrade your focus. Instead of another 20 minutes of micro clips with no narrative arc, choose one piece of longer form content. Watch an entire comedy special and let yourself laugh out loud. Put on a documentary that stretches your sense of the world. Listen to a band or an album from start to finish. Do you remember the days when we listened to albums as a story or even an adventure? Now Spotify auto-plays the next song that their algorithm figures will keep us streaming based on what 713 million other users listen to. Instagram knows exactly what you're likely to like. YouTube Shorts, well, mine is all Anatoly the gym cleaner pranks and AI videos of cats chasing bears out of backyards. I don't know what this says about me, but I digress. The simple rule is expand attention beyond the length of a reel. At first, restlessness might show up, and that's okay. That's what it feels like when a nervous system trained on hyper-short content relearns how to settle. Okay, now it's time for a quick summary. Put all of this together and something powerful starts to emerge. 2 rounds of box breathing interrupt the stress loop and quietly lower the gear. Candlelight and a few minutes of stargazing one night a week soften the edges of the evening and reconnect you with the sky above your home. Airplane mode for the first 30 minutes of the day means mornings start with you, not with notifications. A single value on the mirror becomes a daily prompt that turns identity into action. What went well gently retrains the mind away from pure threat detection. Swapping doom scrolling for a full comedy show or a documentary or an album stops attention from shrinking to 47 seconds for the rest of your life. Now, none of these changes are huge, and that's exactly the point. They're small enough to start today, but meaningful enough to change the person you'll be when the holiday break finally arrives. Instead of collapsing on day one and spending half the time recovering from the year, you meet the break with a nervous system that already knows how to downshift, and a mind that's already a little bit more aligned. So the invitation is simple. Let's not wait for January to save us. Choose one of these tiny disruptions and begin it today. Light the candle, leave the phone on airplane mode, write the value on the mirror, breathe those 2 rounds of box breathing. Trade one doom scroll session for a full show or a full story. The future self you're heading toward doesn't need perfection. It just needs you to start gently, intelligently, now, so that when the holidays arrive, you're not begging them to fix your life. You're simply continuing a trajectory you've already begun.